All right, here in lesson 6, we are still in a repair mode. The first handful was a lot about learning, and then the middle of these lessons deals a lot with repair. And then the end deals with, moving forward, protecting, growing, bringing the credit score up. And so right now what we are going to focus on and talk about today is the FICO score. Fair Isaacs is the organization that created the FICO score. It's an algorithm. An algorithm, for those of you that are not, the math whizzes of our student body, is kind of a group of math equations. Each one has an answer, and then the two together create one answer. I like that because that's a good example of how to look at them, actually. And so that pie is, each piece of pie is worth its own 100%, but each 100% is worth perhaps less or more than another. So, the reason why I really want you to understand the FICO score is because as you approach opening a new line of credit, I want you to first engage, assess how it's going to affect your overall score. No longer we just go out and apply and say yes to this. We're going to think about things first and make a decision that is best for you. Now, let me go ahead and bring this up, actually. Over here we go. Okay, so the weight of each category towards your credit score. Let's start with the biggest one right there. Your payment history is 35% of your score. So let's say you have no payment history. That is a massive chunk of your score that's either very small or non-existent. If you have zero history, you may not even have a credit score. So once you have a history in there, you could immediately be like a 650 or something. So having a score, but if it's an item that keeps you in the low 500s, it's almost better to get rid of that history, because although there's a positive nature to it, it's a negative item. Okay, so that there's a great company that I'm going to get into other companies here toward the end that you can go to that will assist you in bringing your score up and creating some of these different elements. Now, the amounts owed, that's 30%. That's pretty big too. So let's say you want to keep what you owe small in relation to like what you could possibly owe. That your credit cards could hit many different subjects inside of this wheel, inside of this pie. And so but you don't want to be overextended. So like, let's say you make $30,000 a year, you don't want to owe $40,000 in debt, especially if it has to be returned in that year. Can you see how there's, just an inability to pay there? And so that's why a score is necessary, because it assists organizations in figuring those kind of things out. Now, length of credit history it sounds kind of like your payment history, but the length of credit history could be, 1 through 10 years. Someone who's 18, 19, they're going to have a year of credit history. Someone who is 35 would have like 10 years, plus or minus, and so that's only 15%. But do you see how having a credit card for a year versus a brand new card could be totally different when weighing your score? Time is the biggest healer and is a huge plus, even in the credit repair process. These companies that want to take a year in repairing your credit, they count on natural correction happening in that year too. So there's a lot of work these companies get credit for, and they don't actually, they're not the ones that that harvested that. So the length of credit history, asks how long your credit accounts have been established, how long specific credit accounts have been established, and how long it's been since you used certain accounts. So that's one reason why if you have accounts, you want to use them. You don't want to be closing shop and closing those up either. So the credit mix in use is good. I recommend getting a signature loan if you can, an unsecured card, a credit card. You could get a car loan. Mix it up a little bit. It's always responsible, I think, to have 2 or 3 cards if you can. Have that mix in there. But that's 10% of your score, not a huge thing. The last 10 remaining part of your score is new credit. So if you feel that inquiries are affecting you negatively, it's still in that little piece of pie. And it can only be so negative. Oftentimes, that'll be a selling point someone will use to get you to purchase credit repair. If you have no other items, they'll say, oh, your inquiries are just killing you. We've got a lesson designed just for inquiries. So we'll go into that more later. But let's say I just purchased a new card. This is where it gets a little bit interesting, and you've got to be open-minded creatively. If you open up a new card, there's an inquiry that might have dropped your points, 3, 5 points, but now it's a new credit line too, and it may not have been the most positive thing, but in a year, it's going to become very positive. It's going to shoot off, maybe not even a year. But when I use the term a year loosely, in that, your accounts are going to affect you more for the first couple years and less so in the last couple years that they would even be on your credit report, typically, 5, 6, 7 years. And so those are the 5 things that you need to pay attention to. So as an example, let's say I'm getting a credit card. I'm going to think, okay, I'm going to get that credit card, and I'm going to go from a 650 to a 645. But that depends on really where I was before. Let's say I didn't even have a score, and I opened up that credit card. My score might have gone up 50 points rather than down 5 to 10 for having a new credit line when I already have a bunch of other balances. And so what happens from here is you need to take that little bit of a hit so that later on it can be more powerful. Later on, you are going to, you're really going to have a huge credit score because of taking that small hit earlier on. So look at your credit lines like that. And then you have that credit card for 2, 3, 4 years. You've got a huge payment history. You have a huge credit history. In time, you're going to, whatever work you do now, however good it is now, it's going to be much better in the future. So let's say you finish this education program, and I probably could have, stopped sharing the screen, but I'm going to jump into something else here in just a moment I want you guys to see. You're going to get done. Your points may have gone up 100 points, but 2, 3 years, because of getting those negatives off and establishing these positive lines, it's going to go up another 100 points. That really is going to be 200 points from what you were learning and doing right now as we speak. Okay, so here's another matter. I want you guys to see these FICO scoring systems. You've heard of FICO. Maybe today was the first time. There's many different versions of FICO that's used. Sometimes if you're seeking a couple different types of lending with one organization, they may go off of just one of these FICOs instead of running your score a couple times. But the most widely used version is your FICO score 8 right now. That's the most up-to-date. Some people are using different versions because it's an auto FICO, or it's a credit card decision, or it's just an older version because they haven't updated to the newest yet. So you're going to have many different FICO systems out there. Now, because FICO has just been the big thing, you've got Vantage Score, The credit card companies have come up with a scoring system so they don't need to rely on FICO all the time. But even though the credit bureaus know that your bank might use FICO, their system is very much similar and the algorithm is very similar. It's kind of like, may I dare say, Pepsi and Coke. You know, they're similar, both are very popular, they're amazing, but the recipes, they really are similar if you compare one to like root beer or Dr. Pepper or something. I hope I can use those terms because I've seen them in the movies, so I know that that's the case. But, you know, TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, and all these companies out there that will sell you the credit reports of the three and scores. There's different homemade versions out there you've got to be careful with. They can be 5 points different from FICO. Who knows? They could be 100 points different from FICO. And so you want to take them with a grain of salt. There's a company that I work with that monitors my credit for free, and they have their own system. And so it's accurate and, you know, it offers some great tools, but I, again, take it with a grain of salt. FICO typically is the most widely used thing right now. And so be aware of that it's just something to be aware of. Not to be alarmed or cautious or think you're getting burned or anything like that, but let's be aware of that. Now, here is a little thing I'm sharing with you guys. Take this with a grain of salt, too. I just have a list of negatives on here and what they could be worth. Here's a bankruptcy, estimated 50 points. It could be as low or even a high as 100 points lower on your score if you have it. The estimate here is it could be 50 points off. So this is kind of a silly thing, but as I want you to really just start living the credit score system and integrating it into your life, be aware that this is how items typically will affect you. Late payments, it might only be 5 points. It can be as many as 25. I think these estimates, if I remember correctly, those are examples that I've actually seen with clients. And so this is pretty close. Nobody's going to look at this list and say, oh, that's way off, because I have a case where I can show them that is the case. And here's your positives. Credit card, you know, could bring you up 50 points using that correctly. Vehicle loan, same with a mortgage, signature loan. All of those together and building a history with it, those numbers will change and fluctuate based on those other 4 factors, you know, in the credit pie. So be aware of that. These are some downloads. Your score could possibly go down when a negative is removed. Is a little marker down there as well. That's a PDF from the past I want you to pay attention to. So yeah, we're really good to go. Know this, memorize this. If I walk past you on the street, I'm going to say, how much is your payment history worth? And I want you to tell me, because you're experts. That's what you're learning. You're becoming specialists in credit. You guys are knowing what an untapped market knows nothing about, that everybody is affected by. Okay, so you guys are learning a skill that is very valuable. I hope you know that. So I look forward to seeing you guys next week. We are getting ready to ramp up and do other disputes here very shortly. Next week, we are going to just touch up on inquiries. And it's kind of a smaller subject, so I'm going to beef it up as much as I can. But I'll explain why I chose to keep it in and by itself. Because it's a very valuable thing. It teaches us about credit as a whole, and it just really deserves to be focused on, even though in a lot of ways it's a small issue. Yeah, let's look forward to diving into inquiries. Print off your PDFs. Homework. Create your own homework, guys. Keep your knowledge, learning everything you can about this, and we're gonna go from here. This is so exciting. So see you next week. Have a good night.